Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first January 2022 IT Leaders of the Year. We are a networking group, as you know. We meet bi-monthly, every other month on the third Tuesday, and we're starting our 6th year right now. It's amazing to me that we've done that many. So, 6 times 5 is 30. This is the 31st installment of an IT Leaders meeting. What is IT Leaders about? Who are we and why are we here? This group was built with the help of the Indie CIO network to really focus on directors and managers of IT, those leaders of tomorrow and the second level people, the people who are boots on the ground and actually getting the work done. What has happened over the years is many CIOs and VPs of IT have attended, depending on who's speaking and if there's a pandemic going on. And everyone's welcome. There's no real limits on you. We also have a few people who are aspiring managers, who have been former managers, who really want to focus on leadership skills. Topics here are always around leadership skills. That technology stuff I talked about before we got started, not part of our meeting. It's really just the context for what we're doing. The hard part is the people. I always say at the beginning of these meetings, most of us were promoted from stellar individual contributors to some level of incompetence as a leader, so we're trying to get better. You're here because you're trying to get better. The first year, many folks who attended were sent by their CIO or by their leader. I would say it was near 70% the first year, and now it's the opposite. Now it's 70% of people who are just trying to get better attend. So welcome. We're glad you're here in spite of the circumstances with the pandemic right now. Bathrooms over here, men's and women's. If you need to leave early, Bob Carter over here, one of our account executives, can help walk you out. We'll be done at 10 or before, depending on how long the talk goes. You can text me as well if you need to. There's been some changes this year. We're recording events. Brian Fedge, one of our long-term attendees, heard the call at the last meeting that we needed videographers and recommended his son Eric, who's behind the camera today. Eric has come to an agreement with us to help us improve production quality of these. We never recorded the meetings before the pandemic, and during the pandemic we reached a whole new audience of people who weren't able to attend in person during the virtual meetings. We had Zoom meetings. So when we came back to in-person, we wanted to make sure that we could continue to serve that group, but we didn't want to disincentivize people from showing up because the networking is a huge part of what we do, right? The best time to network is 2 years ago, and the second best time is today. So if you can't make it, we're recording it and we'll post the videos on YouTube so you can catch those, and we'll give you a link to those presentations if there's PowerPoint presentations along with the video, so you can get that and you can share it with others. There's a good chance we are going to put that video content behind a wall that requires you to be on the mailing list for IT leaders. I don't think that's much of a challenge for many of you, but don't be surprised if you see that coming along here in the next few weeks. As I said, no live streaming. Our check-in procedure is a little bit more arduous. When I register, about a week before the meeting, I send the list through the meat grinder at Expedient, and they get you pre-registered. And those of you who filled out the additional information required on the pre-registration link in that email, your badges were pre-printed, and all you really have to do is show your driver's license and come in. So that's what that email is about. And same great catering from Jonathan Birds and same great speakers. If you like what you hear, talk about it on social media, please, on LinkedIn. If a couple of you wouldn't mind taking some pictures while we talk, I'd appreciate it. Hashtag ITLeadersIndie is how you can describe it. And you can text those pictures to me if you will as well. How do you stay informed? itleaders.org/Indianapolis is the best way to do that. We always have the current meeting, we have dates on the future meetings. Our next meeting is March 15th, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Actually, our next meeting is the survey summary webinar. This will be the 4th year we've reviewed the survey. Raquel Richardson of Centric Consulting and I will go over those results. It's always interesting to see. We had kind of a low census this year. It was just a little bit under 50. So the law of small numbers applies. However, I think it does indicate some directional interest for a lot of people, and it's a variety of sizes of companies. We also maintain a LinkedIn company page, which is another place you can find information, and a lot of members and other folks post leadership information into that space. So if you find a good leadership article, send it to me, or send it to Rusty Maynard, who maintains the LinkedIn company page. That's Rusty. He works at Taft Law, and his email is at the bottom there if you find an article that you think the group might benefit from. We also have a LinkedIn private group, and it hasn't been used much. The goal of it was to really let you communicate with each other. The CIO network uses a listserv that describes needs. Typically, people write in and say, hey, I'm looking for a particular strategy document, or anybody know a good MSP in town, that sort of thing. But there's some interesting discussions that go on in there. There has not been as much utilization of the LinkedIn private group. It was built for the same reason. I'm considering switching to a listserv because I think it might be a little less friction to communicate. So I will probably be calling you and asking you questions about what would be the most meaningful way for you to use that. And we have a mentorship program. It's been going since day one. It's a self-serve, one page. I've got a one-page set of directions. There's about a dozen CIOs who've expressed interest in being mentors. So if that's interesting to you, just contact me directly, and I can send you the self-service program, and we can get you connected into that. IT Leadership Boot Camp has been a little bit off and on the last year and a half, and I bet you know why. Lou Russell has done a couple of virtual sessions. She struggles with it. Frankly, she says it's very difficult for her to get the same benefit. I don't think they've got anything scheduled right now, but it is a great value, $1,000 or $975 for 20 hours of material, self-assessments, 360 assessments, emotional intelligence training, and a lot of tabletop exercises. Mary, you went through that, didn't you?
Yeah, I went through the first cohort.
Was it useful?
It was very useful, the tabletop exercises specifically.
Oh my gosh, Lou's so good.
Yep.
I mean, she trained my team at Methodist Hospital 25 years ago. That's where I met her. I bet she'd punch me if I said that out loud when she was here. But she's really good. I call her the IT whisperer, and she really is. Okay, this is the part where you're the presenter. Anybody have open positions in their organization that they're trying to fill?
I've got 2+.
Fire away, Mary.
We have one for a system, specifically the CRM that's for enrollment. I work at Butler University, so for enrollment. And then I'm also looking for a junior level developer, a stack developer, with also a focus on WordPerfect.
What's the CRM platform? What's the CRM platform?
It's Slate, so it's very specific in the higher ed. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Jamie.
It's not posted yet, but by the end of the month, we'll be looking for a data analyst for the city of Noblesville. Someone who's familiar with business intelligence tools. If they have any kind of familiarity with Salesforce, we're going to be moving some things to that, but generally SQL database servers, querying those, and working with public safety, fire, and police.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I've got one. Not posted yet, but coming within the week, a director of IT service management, and also will be accountable for security. I have a security architect, but we're going to roll that up there. We have a third-party service provider partner, and we use ServiceNow. So looking for somebody to
Company is Braun Ability, by the way.
here in Carmel.
Yeah, right. You can walk there from here, so nice and close. Anybody else? Anybody looking for their next role? Brian?
Brian Fulwider. looking for a cybersecurity director role here in the Indianapolis area or remote.
Okay.
30 years of IT experience, done app dev, infrastructure, security, obviously. Recently did get my CISSP certification.
Nice.
So,
Congratulations. Yeah, that checkered past is really valuable. It's rare to find somebody who's been both in app dev and infrastructure in leadership. I think it's a really valuable set of skills. Great, thank you. I just want to encourage you to let people know if they're in transition or if there's opportunities, have them show up at these meetings. I cannot tell you how many connections have been made over the years through this. So it's extremely valuable, I think, for those people in transition. What's coming up? February 15th, 8:30 to 10. This is on itleaders.org/Indianapolis, this link to the Zoom webinar. This is virtual, so you don't have to show up here. And then March 15th, here, back in this room, third Tuesday, just like always, Mike Butler, Chief Technology Officer of First Merchants, he's really focused on his teams and cultures. So I look forward to hearing him. And I've got another speaker lined up, but we've had a few shuffling the slots that they take this year. So I'm trying to nail that down, and we'll have another good speaker with Mike in March. And gratitude. IT Leaders wouldn't exist without Expedient. They hired me to do community outreach here in Indianapolis and in some of our other markets. And being a manager in my past, I've known that there was a gap on IT leadership training, and we confirmed that way back in 2017 with many of the CIOs and directors who were affiliated with the CIO network, and we're going strong. This meeting, we've had 50 to 70 people in this room for years until the pandemic, so I expected to get back there. In the last two meetings that we did in 2022, we had about 30 people each meeting in the room. So people are open to getting out and meeting in person again. I think the Omicron variant has slowed a few people down and given them pause, but I'm crossing my fingers that we'll be out of this soon. Today's speakers, we have two of the top IT professionals from Ivy Tech. We've got my old friend Matt Etchison that I met 15 years ago. I think it was a little bit longer than that, actually. Back when you were at another company and I was at another company too. He's the CIO of Ivy Tech Community College, and we've got Thomas Riebe, the CTO. Please welcome them. We're going to use an interview format. I'm going to ask these guys some questions, and I want you to ask questions as well. I mean, this is really about how you work together and how you focus to make sure that you get your work done. You know, in many arrangements, in many teams, we find that there's as much conflict internally as there is with a business. It's been interesting over the years to hear different IT leaders talk about the levels of conflict and how they resolve. I mean, I've heard everything from fighting and arguing and coming to consensus and moving on to, I have to leave. It's too much. You're asking me to cross a line that I can't cross. We got none of that here, fortunately, this morning, but I'm looking forward to hearing what both of these great guys have to say. Matt, can you give us some background? Can you give us some professional background?
Sure. So I've been Matt Etchison, CIO, Ivy Tech Community College. I've been in the role for 3 years and 3 months. I've been in IT since 1996, the .com era, not to date myself, but so it started off at a help desk at Thompson Consumer Electronics, if you remember RCA here, so at the contact center. So I started off help desk doing that role. I should back up a little bit and say, I was going to college at IU, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Help desk job came up, but I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll go work at a help desk. The rest is kind of history after that. So did the help desk role for 3 years, became an IBM sysadmin, did enterprise messaging, BlackBerries, monochrome back in the day. I had a company called Irwin Mortgage, which is now Freedom Mortgage on 69 in Government Drive North. And I spent 8 years there. While I was there, we were the first customer to roll out enterprise telephony with interactive intelligence, which was on the Lotus Notes and Domino platform, if you remember the old enterprise messaging. So again, to date myself. At that time, since we were the first customer, I had a lot of experience with Interactive, and so Interactive had a position opening up in the engineering side, R&D. I went there in 07, spent 9 amazing years there. I was engineer number 30, I think, and we had ended up with 200 engineers on my team, and then employee number 500, we ended up with 23 employees before I left. So did that. I was doing that and really enjoying that gig, and then Ivy Tech reached out to me about coming over to blow up the academic programs for IT and create IT talent at Ivy Tech that I'd want to hire. And I was like, I'm not doing academia, forget it. So I literally like turned it down 3 times, and finally the president reached out. They're like, just have a conversation. We'll buy you coffee or lunch. Let's talk about it. And you know, after talking to the president, Tom Snyder, at the time, I kind of realized that, you know, unless you go to some blue chip school, I mean, like a Notre Dame or Rose-Hulman, IU, Purdue, Duke, MIT, pick your poison. You know, there's a branding there that's associated with IT and IT skills, but at a community college, you don't need a 4-year degree to be in IT, right? So I said, you know what, this will be my thing. I think I can give back to the community, back to the state, and create talent. So when I came over, kind of looked at the programs. We did a lot of like Oracle certifications, Microsoft certifications, a lot of good things at the college. But Mark Benioff came here for the opening of the Salesforce Tower, and he said, we're going to create like 350 apprentices in Indianapolis. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Well, that was on Saturday. On Monday, they called me, Salesforce called me from San Francisco and said, you're going to do this with us, and we're flying in tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. And so Salesforce came, and they flew out here, and we talked about that. And literally, there was not one college or university in the entire country teaching Salesforce skills at the time. So Ivy Tech, we created the Pathfinder Program. It's down in Europe. And basically, we allow you to learn the hard technical skills of Salesforce and learn the soft skills from Deloitte, set you up with an internship and a co-op, and get you onto a job. Many of the Salesforce talent on the team are actually Pathfinder grads at Ivy Tech. And so since then, a lot of schools, a lot of community colleges have adopted the Salesforce program. So that was definitely an exciting moment, I think, really to see that, hey, you know what, there's all these skills that are lacking that you're just not getting at a 4-year university. So Ivy Tech kind of put itself on the map with that, and kind of, you know, enrollment. We've had a lot of neat students where the president of the college of Ivy Tech, President Elserman, has people come up from IU, Purdue, Butler, and say, hey, how do I get into your Pathfinder program? So kind of a, you know, kind of a shift. We have most of the time you're used to Ivy Tech students transferring to IU or Purdue. So that was an interesting shift skill-wise. And then the CIO position came open in fall of 2018, applied for that, and got that position, partnered up with Thomas as the CTO, and sort of the rest is history.
Wow, interesting. Thomas, what about your background professionally?
Well, again, Thomas Riebe, again, CTO over at Ivy Tech. So I kind of had a little bit similar background start. I also started on a help desk. And I will say, anybody who starts on a help desk, that's the best way to start in IT. Because you understand kind of the voice of the customer, and you learn how to talk to different people at different levels throughout the organization. So I did that for a couple of years at a really small IT company here called Bradford Scott Data Corporation back in 95 to 97. So I started a little bit before you did. And did that for a couple of years. And then I moved on to a company called Conseco. Some of you may remember that, which from the past. And was there for 6 years. And I was there, they had a trading floor. And they asked me to come in and help with the trading floor. It was based on Sun Solaris, you remember the old Unix, where I got bought by Oracle. So I did that. I got into Oracle DBA while I was there. Got my certifications in Oracle. Also got to start getting open source. I saw Linux on the rise. And so that's exciting. And some of the stuff you do with the open source technology stack. So I did that for, like I said, about 6.5 years. And then, if those that know Conseco know it kind of went through an interesting transformation about that period. I think they went bankrupt, if I remember correctly. And so about 6 months before they're writing the why, I said, go somewhere else. And my wife said, why don't you consider Ivy Tech? And I said, just like Matt, I am not going to academia. I'm not going down that path. And she's like, no, you should try. I was like, no, I don't think I want to. And next thing you know, she applied and actually sent a resume in for me and didn't tell me. So I got a phone call from the hiring manager. It's like, I want to bring you in. I'm like, who is this? You know, what is going on here? So I was like, oh yeah, I have a resume for you. And so I went in. I kind of went into thinking, okay, I'm going to go, but I'm not really interested in this. And then I saw the size of the organization. It is one of the biggest networks in the state. I looked at all the technology they had, all the opportunity they had at the time, and that was very enticing to me. Also, I really liked the mission. You know, my parents, they were kind of that traditional people who grew up in the 40s and 50s and 60s. They got out of high school, they got married. My dad was in the military, he came out, they had kids, and then they decided they wanted to go to education. Right? So they had 4 kids, and they went back to school. And I thought to myself, man, if this was there available for my parents to go through, Because I remember as a kid, my parents would lock themselves in their bedrooms to study at night, me and my sisters would play. So that was a hard journey for them. And I thought, man, if I could make a difference in someone's life at Ivy Tech, doing this kind of stuff we're doing for people, that was very enticing. So I love the mission. And so this, again, that was back in 2003. And so since then, I've had multiple roles in the organization. I started off in system administration, infrastructure side, did a lot of stuff with open source technology stacks, got into programming, into development, web application development, got into leadership roles. And I started out, it's like, hey, you be the infrastructure manager, be the infrastructure director. Back in 2010, they asked me, they said, hey, we have 15 disparate IT organizations across the state that are all parallel to each other. Can you go in, can you clean them all up? Can you optimize costs? Can you bring efficiencies in? And I thought, that's a fun challenge, that's something different. So I did that for 4 years, really enjoyed that. Finished that up and kind of was like, I was looking for something different. I got it all operationalized. And the current CIO at the time, she came to me and she said, listen, security's a mess. Can you go in and do for security what you did for all our IT organizations? And I said, sure. So I spent 4 years cleaning up security. Just like you, I got my CISSP. That's a fun certification. If you've never done it, it's a lot of work. And it's, they say it's an inch deep, a mile wide. I'm not kidding. That was fun. Did that for 4 years and really kind of made security focused on, helping the business understand risk, making it the business a partner, how you manage IT security, and letting them decide how much risk are they comfortable with. And I think a lot of mistakes a lot of security organizations make is IT wants to be the people that tell the business what to do. That's not our job. Our job is to make sure the business understands the risks in front of them. They have the information they need to make decisions how they want to mitigate that risk and then support the business that decision. So I did that, like I said, for 4 years. We had a CIO change. Matt came on board and they asked me to take on the role as CTO. And I'm extremely excited to do that. Been a great partner ever since.
When was the CTO decision?
It's very shortly, right after. Yeah.
So-
January 19th.
Yeah.
19?
Yeah.
All right, so it's been a couple of years, it's been 3 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Tell us about the team you inherited, Matt.
The team was amazing. There was this interesting conflict, though, between the business and IT. And so, I'm sure no one's ever heard that before. So, and I talked to, announced, I think, October of 18, November of 18. I started sitting down with cabinet members, and I kept hearing this theme about IT is a place where projects are going to die. I think black hole where projects are going to die, I think is the actual term. And so I kept hearing this over and over. So what I did was I brought Crow, the local consulting firm, in to say, okay, talk to the business about the projects, talk to IT about the projects, and let's see where we align. 106 IT projects in the books. The average project age was 411 days. And when they interviewed the business and they interviewed IT, we agreed on 5 projects as a priority of 106. That's when I knew Houston we had a problem. And so what we did was we literally sat down with the business and said, okay, let's rescope these just briefly. Do you need this? And a lot of the projects weren't even needed. They're like, that's good. We've been waiting on that for 5 years. And so we scratched a lot of the project, rescoped several, and then really started bringing Agile and bringing an Agile approach to things and say, okay, we're going to give you an MVP. We're going to chip away at these and start delivering them a lot quicker. So we went from 411 days to within about 8 months to the average age of project to be 150 days. And then we sit down with the businesses, and every month we have what's called a pair comparison analysis. You're going to vote on what the top priorities are for the college, and we're going to work on those things. And so what Thomas and I did, we really kind of changed the theme of, we just said, hey, you know what, IT works for you, not the other way around. We went with that and kind of bought a lot of buy-in from the business and helped the team realize that if you can deliver some results quickly, even an MVP, you'll get that support. And so the college embraced Agile. We're not fully Agile yet, but we're getting there, we're getting better. And we really kind of narrowed that project down to about 15 a month that we're going to work on. Now some of those carry on from month to month, of course, but the priorities of college can shift. Certainly during COVID, things shift very quickly. And so by doing that sort of pair comparison analysis every month, say, what do you want us to work on? And then it's literally every representative for the business. It's kind of fun. You can sell tickets to it, it's like pay-per-view, because they fight and they kind of bicker on who's got the bigger priority. And there's
Like a
always
trading floor.
Yeah, it is. And so it's kind of funny because they're like, someone will always say, well, I'm going to the president about this. And so they kind of bicker it out. And we just said, hey, we'll work on whatever you want us to work on. And that shifted, as opposed to before, it was IT was working on things and doing great work, but it was much more siloed and much more vacuum.
How did the team, Thomas, respond to this big shift in letting the business drive more near-term work?
Oh, they embraced it. I mean, you know, they were tired of kind of the squeaky wheel, always having to change priorities on, you know, this business unit or that business unit come to IT and, you know, make a lot of noise and suddenly get to shift constantly. And as Matt said, we had, you know, over 100 projects that were taking forever to get done. So if you're an IT person, you like to see results of your work. You want to see, if I start something, I want to see the finish of it. You want to see the benefit of it. And constantly asking someone to, you know, shift, you know, focus all the time, nothing gets done. And that's what was happening, is that we were constantly being asked to shift our focus, change on projects. This week, this is the hot fire. Next week, that's the hot fire. And so from the IT staff, having that consistency, always knowing, okay, this is the priority, and being lockstep with the business, it took a lot of pressure off of us. You know, we no longer had to say, okay, are we working on the right thing, or having someone come scream to us, why isn't this done yet? You know, it's very clear. And by the same token, all the leadership within IT, as well as on the business side, was in lockstep. So there was no, you know, pushing or, you know, friction there as well. So again, from our perspective, moving that agile model, it's not easy. I will say that. You know, there's an adjustment period on the business side too, and they have to buy into it, and they have to put some skin in the game. And that's the part that gets a little challenging sometimes, because they've got priorities as well. So helping them see that is part of the challenge. But because we're getting there, we're not 100% there yet, but they are seeing the benefit of that.
Matt, how did the business side take to this new Fight Club method of governance?
I think the first couple of meetings where someone realized their project was off the list, they made sure that they were there next time, or they sent a representative to be there.
Yeah.
And I think it's good though too, because one of the things we didn't realize is it gets the business talking to the business, which wasn't always happening either, right? And when we had the waterfall methodology, people would just say, I want this, and then come back in 6 months, and I want to be magically done, and it was never what they wanted ever. I mean, you would never build a house that way. You would never say, here's, I don't know, 300 grand, go build a house and come back. It would never be what you wanted, right? And so as soon as you step foot in the door, you realize that I don't want this flooring or whatever. And I think that's what was happening with IT, is we were being told, like, I want this application like this, and we'd go work on it, and then it'd be like, that's not what we wanted. And there was just never the engagement. So when you start doing daily 15-minute stand-ups, though, every day you know with this sprint, this is what we're working on, and we're engaged. And I would say that the teams and areas of the business that embraced Agile first, they realized, like, hey, this is what I want, because I'm seeing results all the time. And so that was a big culture shift. And then some of the organizations or some of the business units that didn't embrace Agile, you know, and they were stuck with kind of the old way, and they realized, and they were hearing from their peers, like, hey, my work's getting done all the time. What's up with your team? And I think that kind of like, and Agile's not new by any means, but it's fairly new for higher ed. So,
Thomas, do you think that your team struggled more, or the business struggled more with the shift?
I think it was equal parts. I think in the very, very beginning, the teams kind of struggled a little bit, since they were used to waterfall, they were used to methods. So getting up to speed of what Agile is and what Agile isn't. You know, there's exactly Agile by the book, and then there's Agile works for your organization. So that was part of the challenge, is finding, you know, where Agile works best for us. And then, so once we kind of figured that out, you know, I think that pain point shifted to the business, because now they have to skin the game. You have to have a, you know, project sponsor, project owner. You got to be able to attend those 15-minute stand-ups. And some business units embrace that. They say, okay, I'll be there every day or every stand-up to make sure that the project is moving forward. Other business units are like, I can't commit that much time to it. And so that was a challenge that we had to help them work through, and say, okay, here's why you want to do that. And as Matt said, as the business units that bought in, saw their projects moving forward and saw the results they wanted, the word spread, their business like, okay, maybe I need to make time for this, or maybe I do need to take more of an approach with this. And so I think that's kind of what I've seen, is basically, you know, IT at first had a little bit of a struggle figuring out how to kind of find their footing. And once we did, now everybody understands it. You know, if we have scrum teams that meet every week, we have 2 scrum teams, you know, no one thinks twice of it. But on the business side, you know, as you still approach the business, different businesses, they come into it, there's still an initial hesitancy of like, how much time do I commit to this? What do I have to do? Because I've also got all this other stuff over here I have to do for my job. And getting that time commitment from them, that can be a challenge at times.
as Thomas said, the time commitment was kind of funny though, because we first rolled it out, you know, people say we're having 15-minute stand-ups every morning. They're like, oh, I don't have time for 15-minute stand-up. And I was like, you know, it's such a priority. We can't make 15 minutes for it. But So when you point it out to them, they tend to want to show up for 50 minutes.
Have you adjusted the frequency of your communication with business over time? Do you treat it department by department, or how frequently do you communicate with
So
business?
everyone in the IT leadership team is partnered with a cabinet member that they meet with, probably every other week, or at least monthly. And I think we've really open line of communications too. This isn't, we don't run a top-down organization. We want everyone to lead at all levels, regardless of your title or job. So you can reach out to the business at any given point and have those communications. It doesn't need Thomas and I to be involved with that.
I would add to that, we, through different technologies, like we have Teams, Microsoft Teams, and there's probably not a day that doesn't go by that I have the business leader reach out to me or they reach out to one of my staff members because it's just right there and they got a question, they want to do something. So I think some of the technologies we've embraced, whether not Microsoft Teams or Zoom, those things also, with the pandemic, it kind of forced the business and us to communicate differently with each other. We were so used to going to actually person meetings, but with the pandemic, it forces us to use those technologies. And prior to the pandemic, some business units embraced Teams, they embraced Zoom, other ones didn't at all. But now they all had to. And then once that, that Pandora's box has been opened, now they're all wanting to text you. And they're all saying, hey, can you go look at this? Can you fix that? So there's a bit of a challenge with that. But at the end of the day, it also opened up a lot of communication lines as well. And I think that's also our communication, is they know that at any given time they can just reach out over Teams and ask a question. And for the most part, we as leaders, we want to answer as fast as we can.
IT at Ivy Tech was historically pretty decentralized over the years. When I look back, is that changing?
Go for sure.
Yeah.
Shared services, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so like I said, in 2010, it was just that. And I mentioned that earlier in my journey. We had 15 different IT organizations throughout in the university. They were completely separate budgets, different leadership teams, different priorities. We had 4 different help desks. We had multiple directory services, overlapping IDs. It just depended which campus you were at. Like I had Novell, I had open source LDAP, Active Directory, all these systems. And we also had a lot of duplication of effort. Each team was spending, prior to a semester start, 6 to 8 weeks imaging machines in preparation for a semester start. You take that times 14, 15, that's a lot of resources lost. They're negotiating contracts locally versus as the whole. So we looked at that opportunity to consolidate all that stuff. It was not initially well received. The business was afraid they would not get the customer service they were accustomed to at their campus because they control the budget, they control the authority. They could basically get the phone. They knew that the person on their line would jump and do what they wanted. So how do you convince them that customer service level is not going to go down if you centralize all that stuff? And so we did a master service agreement, contract per se, with each one of the campuses and laid out, here's our service level, this is what we promise, here's how we're going to measure it, every month report it back to you. And they signed off on it, we signed off on it. The first year in operation, we eliminated a lot of duplicity across the environment. We improved the PC fleet. I had PCs at some campuses that were over 10 years old because the campus controlled the budget and it was not a priority for them, but it was hurting our students. So we upgraded the entire fleet, got everything up to standards within the first 2 years. I think the second year, we gave the business back $14 million. So, and we basically, of course, the campuses wanted that money back, which we did, we gave it to them. But, we had that success. By the same token, we were able to prove through numbers that we actually raised our customer service. They saw, okay, this works. And I had several chancellors that come to me afterwards like, I thought this was never going to work. I think this is going to happen. You proved me wrong. So it was a great success story. And now we're one IT organization across the entire state. We have one chain of command. We're about 180 people.
188 people, yeah.
So, and again, no one's come back to that since and ever said to us, let's decentralize IT. That's not ever come up, has it?
Done that, but just for context too, for
Please.
folks who don't know, we have 19 major campuses and 22 additional sites, so basically 41 locations statewide. So you really can't drive to any town in Indiana, not see an Ivy Tech of sorts. And so, and then a team of 188. And so, and we take all of our support calls within Service Desk or within ServiceNow for our Service Desk. Those are all distributed statewide, so whoever is available to take the calls. So we originally had that at IU at a cost of $800,000 a year. We decided that we wanted Ivy Tech people answering Ivy Tech calls, and so we moved our Service Desk to. Took 60,000 calls last year on our Service Desk, and all internally from Ivy Tech employees.
Amazing. Talk about the culture within IT. How would you describe it, Thomas?
I would describe it, it's an open culture. Anybody knows that they can come to me or Matt or any of the management team and be open to their questions and their comments. We're not I worked at Disney Leadership Academy many years ago, and they kind of described two types of management. And there was the kind of, I hate to use the word IBM management style, but it was like top down, you shall respect my authority, all that kind of stuff down. And then there was a servant leader management style, where my job and Matt's job is to help our staff get rid of boulders in their way so they do their job. And I really think we've embraced that kind of culture, where I'm here to serve all of the employees, all the IT staff. What can I do to make their jobs better? How can I make sure that if they have boulders in their way, that I can remove those? If they're stuck on something, what can I do? Also, if there's a great idea, they see something that wants to be changed or fixed, they have the comfort level to come to me anytime and say, hey, here's an idea I have, and they know we're going to listen. And if it makes sense, we're going to do it. And we're going to give them the credit. I also tell my teams all the time that, everybody makes mistakes. And the only bad mistake you can make when you make a mistake is not tell me. And so that's the other thing, is you like a lot of truth in the organization. So if someone makes a mistake, just tell me, we'll fix it. If it becomes a repeated mistake, yeah, we'll have a challenge there, and we're going to address that. But for the most part, if people know they have that comfort to say, okay, I made this mistake, I fat-fingered this, and they can come to us, and they have comfort that they're not going to get chewed out, but we're going to sit there, we're going to work through it, we're going to manage it. It also builds a lot of trust. So if I had to kind of summarize our culture in one word, it'd be trust. There's a lot of trust between us and the staff in the field. We know we have their back, and they have our back.
Anything to add?
No, I think Thomas nailed it. I think, the culture, it amazes me still when I talk to IT leaders and people that they want people clocking in and out, they want people sitting in the office, they want people doing sort of things. Like, you trust them with the keys to the castle that can bring your entire organization down. You don't trust them to be on the clock when they want to be on the clock to get the work done. And I think you have to lead to results, not manage the process. And I think we've done a good job of that. When I became CIO, we had a Q&A session, and I didn't know everyone in IT. And so there was this rumor that I was going to take away the 1 day a week work from home policy. And so someone asked me about that, like, are you removing our 1 day a week work from home policy? And I was like, I don't care if you work from the moon in the middle of the night. I really don't. As long as you get results and I can see the outcomes and see the effort. And that's it. And I think we've done a good job of just trusting people, hiring people, and trust them. And again, you give them the key to the castle, so you can't expect them to micromanage them.
How's the work from home and future of work in your organization?
Yeah, I think you and I joked about this during when COVID first happened. I think IT people, they just turned on VP and went to work like nothing changed. IT people doing this for 30 years. Like it was like everyone was in a panic. The store shelves were empty. Everyone's freaking out. We're like, we're just going to work as we normally do. Shower even less often as IT people, right? And so I think it's been great. And I think I'm always amazed about how much IT people work. I mean, they're always working. And I joked a while back. We have teams, and someone had made a comment. I was kind of, I'm a late nighter, as Thomas, so we're always like, midnight, 1 o'clock on Teams or whatever. And I just simply, on a group Teams, group chat, I did a thumbs up to someone's comment. And then like 5 people just piled on, like they'll start talking. I'm like, okay, can you all go to bed? It's like 1:30, like I was just liking your comment. But you don't realize people are actively engaged all the time, and it's kind of a 24/7 job. All of us IT people know that's been that way forever. So I think that the team has been extremely resilient. I am still shocked about the outcome and the effort. I mean, I didn't realize how 24/7 we were until COVID, and I think the team's done a phenomenal job, and we don't have a lot of people back to the office. People come in occasionally, but our workout output is, I would say, a factor of 3, 4, 5 what it was pre-pandemic, because people just felt committed. And I think also too, people in IT realized that if anyone's going to keep it together during the pandemic and not panic, it's probably the IT folks. And so I think it's a testament to IT people in general.
Any policy changes about how IT people show up and work because of COVID, or is the situation normal, Thomas?
Make that situation normal. We really put any policies in place. I know other organizations did. I was talking to a friend of mine at Salesforce, and one thing they did is they required the camera to be on all the time. So if you're working from home, which I would never do that to our teams, because again, I don't see them in pajamas. I feel like that'd be the case if I turn some cameras on, but not really. No, again, it goes back to the trust thing. I mean, the work speaks for itself. I mean, if the work's getting done, And as Matt pointed out, productivity's gone up, not down since the pandemic. And, you know, what do I got to complain about? Why do I need policy put forward? And again, you know, if something became a problem, maybe we address it that way, but for the most part, it's not been. The teams have all told me they love working from home, for the most part. I mean, the one thing I hear now and then is we miss the camaraderie of the office, the water cooler stuff. But we try to make up for that with, you know, Teams and Zoom and things like that. I will say we did some number tracking on Teams. I mean, the number of conversations that happen within a given week, within a given month, is off the charts. You know, so they're embracing it. And like I said, we do a lot of banter, a lot of joking around using, you know, Teams and Zoom. So you try to make it fun, you adapt, and by the same token, when you get a chance to get together with someone offline, you do.
How has your org chart changed over the years since you got started? Have you changed it much?
So we brought on Brad Watts as Chief Data Officer, brought him in, and I think we've done some shuffling of some roles as far as like developers and architect, and maybe reassign them to actually creating a Salesforce team or a ServiceNow team. But I mean, you know, I'm not big on the hierarchy at all. I think everyone leads at all levels, and you can motivate and incentivize people to want to do that. And so we're not big on the org chart. I think one of the good things is Thomas and I both being technical, we can be in the technical calls, in the weeds, and helping and contributing. And I actually created the Salesforce org, which is kind of becoming an ongoing joke, because my team's like, let's let the professionals handle it, please. And so they like to razz me about that. So because again, they're in it 40, 50, 60 hours a week, unlike myself. So I think that one of the great things I think that Thomas and I partnered on is if you look at every possible IT skill, I think between the two of us, we probably have it covered to some degree. I mean, he's got network, infrastructure, and security. I got software as a service, enterprise telephony, software development, agile. I mean, so if you combine us, there's nothing we can't be involved in, which I think the team likes because then they can go and there's someone who is a subject matter expert they can ask a question about and bounce ideas off of. But again, what Thomas and I do is we defer to the leaders on the team to say, you know what, you tell us what's best. Let's vet that out as a group.
And I tell the teams all the time, you know, I'm going to be devil's advocate in the call. I'm going to try to, you know, poke holes in it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to trust your judgment. You know, so, and then you tell them up front, they respect that. You know, so here, let's see if we can find a flaw in it, and it becomes a game. But at the same token, you know, I want their opinions. I trust their judgment of the day. I'm going to trust their calls.
How do you deal with outsourcing and service providers and vendor relationships?
So we do a lot of business with Mosier Consulting. We've done business with Aperio in the past. Collaborative Solutions is our Workday implementation partner. The challenge we have is the balance between, you know, hiring and headcount and having that permanently on our budget versus managing and doing managed services and outsourcing. And the challenge we have also is, you know, we're not going to pay at IB Tech what a Fortune 500 company will pay. We have phenomenal benefits, great work-life balance, and so we're able to attract and retain talent because of those things. But there's some things that are really challenging to get. Like if you want a really experienced Salesforce architect, as many of you may know, it's very hard to find to try to hire those folks. And any architect in general nowadays in the market. So it's a matter of balancing recruiting for that talent versus just doing a managed service or doing consulting. So we balance. Mosier's been phenomenal. We do more business with them all the time.
Yeah.
So they've been a great local resource for us.
And I think also you can pick and choose, you know, projects that makes more sense. We've done a lot of stuff with ServiceNow. We used it ahead Chicago for development work as well. It's a company called New Rock out of California on our portal. You know, so you pick and choose. Okay, for this project here, do I have expertise in the house, or is there an expertise that I can get here, and how can I then, after the fact, basically that expertise back into the team? So you got to pick and choose and have to be the right fit. And something else to be kind of cautious of. What's the long-term play look like?
Do you have butts and seats method of outsourcing? Are you using any body shops as an augment to your teams?
Yeah,
as needed.
Yeah, well, I would get probably those ones Oracle as a service.
Yeah,
Oracle as a service. So we use Mosier to augment our Oracle team, and so we have 2 Oracle developers on our Oracle DBAs on staff, and they do more of the application administration. As far as the day-to-day, you know, tuning and maintenance of the actual Oracle database, we use Mosier as a service for that. And that's a really good partnership because it frees them up to focus on the application and getting application upgrades in place versus, okay, you know, we need to get you know, the newest version of the patch on there, or, you know, we've done a lot of stuff with Expedia here for our DR processes and getting data guard and stuff like that in place. So, you know, it allows them to focus on the application and meet the needs of the business while they take care of the kind of behind the scenes administrative stuff.
We've used that too with the business, like, we're really good, and I think it's even the titles of this presentation here. We don't tell the business no on basically anything, but we do say it's going to cost you this, right? If you want a 20th campus on the moon for Ivy Tech, we'll put one there in a week, but it's going to cost this. And just be real honest. And again, they'll have that budget or they won't have the budget. The president and CFO has done a great job, the treasurer has done a great job of really setting aside funding for specific projects. Obviously, we're doing the largest workday implementation in the country in higher ed. That's not cheap, right? So they've done a good job in advance of carving out money, saying we're doing Salesforce, which was the biggest in the country, we're doing Workday, which is the biggest country, but we're budgeting in advance, years in advance for those sort of projects. And then it's not a shock to anyone to say, okay, putting a 20th campus on the moon is pretty expensive. And so if you're planning ahead for those sort of things, you can do that. Even during the pandemic, we were still planning and forecasting ahead what we're going to do.
Amazing. If someone were to look at your portfolio of projects over the last 3 years, you've made a radical shift to software as a service on a variety of fronts. Why?
Why software as a service?
Yeah.
I think for us, if you look at the platform, so we built our strategy around Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Workday. It's pretty hard to bet against those three by market cap alone. But those three have been really phenomenal partners on what we want to do as an institution, right? And I think, Thomas and I talk a lot, you have vendors and you have partners. And I think for the Salesforce and ServiceNow and Workday, it's like they see us as a unique entity in higher ed. We are the largest singly accredited community college in the country. We have 160,000 students, including dual credit, so we're massive. And I think those brands said, you know what, we can help you, and here's how we can help you, take your organization to the next level. And they've done a really good job of partnering with us. And I would say those three vendors have never really talked price or money with us. They talk strategy, and then we get around to that eventually, right? And I think they've done a really good job about that. It's like they're not coming in to sell us. They don't have to meet some quarterly goal. They've never approached it that way. And they played the long game with us, right? I mean, we've had conversations with them over the course of years to get where we're at, to even think about launching an application or a product. And so I think that was some of those vendors have done a really good job to become partners with us.
And I also think too is as you look at the future of IT, you think, okay, where do I want to take the limited resources I have in IT? Where do I want to put their time and effort into? Do I want them focusing on managing infrastructure, managing servers, managing databases, or I want them focused on bringing solutions to the business and fix problems? That's the other appeal to going software as a service, is that you let someone else manage that part of it. Your focus is on delivering solutions quickly to the business for the needs they have. The other thing that we've both been in this for a long time. The amount of change the business is demanding on a regular basis is only increasing, and the windows to need those changes is getting smaller and smaller. So how do you deliver rapid change and rapid solutions to the business in a fast process? And that's where software as a service comes into play. And a great example of that is ServiceNow. This last year, there's been a lot of noise, let's put it away, around how do we do contact tracing, how do we do vaccine incentive programs, how do we do those kind of things. And back in the day, before we had ServiceNow, we would have to figure out how to basically code all that from scratch and figure it out. Well, good news is they had a contact tracing solution, a module. And so we partnered with them. We were able to quickly turn around and deliver a solution to the business to address, booster incentives and vaccine registration and contact tracing, all those things. We're going to move very quickly. And that's also one of the benefits as you look at basically software as a service, is you can quickly move and bring solutions to the business. Where in the past, you spent a lot of time, a lot of resources in IT, just keeping the lights on with the infrastructure. And that's not where we're going.
When I had mentioned the 411 days for the average age of a project, when I first got that data point, I had read on one of my TechCrunch blogs that Amazon is a company, Amazon.com, not AWS. Amazon.com does a production code deployment every 11 seconds. So I said that if Amazon ever gets in higher ed business, higher ed's doomed, because there's no way, 411 days to 11 seconds, that comparison. So I tried to shift the team and shift the culture, even with the college, say we've got to move quicker and be responsive. So as Thomas said about ServiceNow and contact tracing, we rolled that out over a weekend. When ServiceNow was ready, we were ready. Software as a service, you just turn it on, turn on those features and modules. Of course, vet it in test environments, but we don't have the army that Salesforce has or Workday has or ServiceNow has. They have the army developers. They can code things very quickly, as can Amazon. And so we're going to be the recipient of that as a customer. and be able to turn that on. If we were to build contact tracing, it might take us 6 months.
Well, and your scale has something to do with use of software as a service, right? 160,000 students, how many employees?
About 8,000 with part-time adjuncts.
That's a whole lot of people. I mean, I'm sure there's been plenty of applications over the years you've looked at that just weren't up to the task.
Yeah, and just trying to maintain them. And again, the business has a insatiable appetite for wanting new features and functionality change constantly. I mean, that's the thing they just do. And I think we joke about it, we kind of become a victim of our own success, right? So now it's like one of those where we've moved so fast that they want that all the time. And so we're always having these conversations like, okay, let's reprioritize this month, because again, there's like, you give them that, they're like, and now the joke is, oh, I feel to write the code for that, right? Just like whatever it is, I mean, time travel, let's write the code for it. And so they've kind of, they've gotten so used to that velocity and cadence that, again, we've tried to have to say, okay, let's pump the brakes a second. Yeah.
Switching gears, talk about your inclusion and diversity efforts inside of IT.
Yeah, I think of the last 3 years and 3 months, the majority of hires have been female, which has been great. I think anyone who's really not taking a good look at that to see that there is a vast amount of talent, I think it's being overlooked, right? And I think we've done a good job of actually bringing in Ivy Tech graduates and students and as interns and bringing them on. And I think, I've been to recruiting fairs throughout my career, and I think one time when I was at Interactive, it was like the booth was Interactive, Lockheed Martin, NASA, Facebook, Amazon, Google, like in a row. And it's this crazy bidding war. And I think too, for us, if we see talent internally, we've had a lot of, actually, our data analyst team has been built from people at campuses who've just been helping the chancellor with data, who like Tableau, like things we were doing. And they're like, hey, like if you ever have any openings, I'd like to come work in IT and learn, you can actually become a data engineer, not just an analyst. We're like, yeah, that's great. So, we've got talent internally that we've brought over from campuses that, of course, they can stay where they're at and their location, work remote. Students that have come over, and we have, of course, we've got, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 School of IT students. And so we have deans, faculty saying, hey, this person's super sharp, you should consider them. So we kind of get first dibs on talent. And
Farm
then,
team.
Yeah, and if you're an Ivy Tech student and you can come out and make 50 or 60,000 out of the gate, and you think you win the lottery, right? And then I know some schools that I've recruited for, like if you're not paying 70 or 80K minimum, you're not even allowed to recruit there, right? So we've kind of grown the farm team, looks at it internally between employees and students.
Have you felt any resistance from the team in trying to be more inclusive across time?
No, I think we have Kathy Carter on our team, and she's our diversity representative. We've had our diversity team come in and present to IT on a monthly basis on different themes. We've done that, and there's a vast amount of talent that's being overlooked, and I think we've done a good job of really trying to recruit it and go after that talent.
Amazing. What are you working on these days?
What aren't we working on?
Yeah, exactly. We've got all these technologies brought in over the years. We brought in, Salesforce. We brought in ServiceNow in the process of bringing on Workday, which is going to be a 5-year project to replace a lot of our legacy ERP applications. That's going to be a huge project that's going to not only change the way the students interact with the business, but how the business interacts with each other and through the different organizations. There's a lot of change there. But the other thing that we're always kind of focused on is enrollment, retention, and completion. So how can we, get people to the college? How can we get them in classes and stay in classes, and finally how we get them a degree? Because that's really our mission. And so we're always looking at, our projects and how they relate to that, how they relate to that overall goal. And so we look at, how we look at our communication strategy for the college. One of the things that we have a new head of our marketing, she's looking at how we communicate with students. So that from an IT's perspective, how can we help with that? We also have a big proponent of data analytics and AI. So how can we use data more and more to help the business make decisions in a really timely manner? How can we use data to figure out, okay, what do our students want most? What's going to be most beneficial to them from an enrollment process, from a staying in class perspective? We did this thing a couple of years ago called Project Early Success, where we use data to kind of predict students that were basically at risk of not completing a class. And it was about 80% accurate. Within 2 weeks of the class, we could tell with an 80% chance, okay, is Johnny going to be successful, or is Johnny going to have troubles? Well, that's great. We identified why Johnny's having struggles, but the next step is, okay, what can we do differently for Johnny to get Johnny to complete that class? And so that's where we're starting to look at more how we can use data analytics, basically, to make our students more successful. And then from the onboarding process, students don't operate the same hours that we as a business operate at. We operate from, 8 to 5, that's traditional business hours. Well, our students are most busy at 11 p.m. at night. Our busiest day of the week is Sunday, and they turn most homework around 1 a.m. So our students who are our customers, they're working at a time that's completely opposite of business. So how can we use technology then to bridge that gap and change that? So that's some of the challenges we're working on, is how can we use technologies like ServiceNow and Salesforce and data analytics, even chatbots, things like that. How can we do things differently? Also, we're also working in business and say, how can we have the business do things differently? One of my jobs is I go talk to businesses and say, tell me your problems. I don't care if they're IT or not. Tell me your problems. And then let me go back and see if we can find technology solutions that help mitigate those problems. So again, lots of projects going on, lots of things around how we can improve, enrollment, retention, completion. Obviously, Workday is a huge project that's going to have impact across the entire business, as well as we have lots more things we want to do with our Salesforce environment, our ServiceNow environment. We want to continue to enhance those platforms to make them more beneficial to our staff and our students. Our mobile app, we want to basically add more functionality to that, so it becomes not just something you kind of look for information, but something from a day-to-day basis makes your experience at college more meaningful and also helps you in your journey to completion. So those are just a few things I can mention that we want to share as well.
Yeah, we're pretty good about doing fairly major rollouts every 3 to 6 months or so. We did September of 2020, we went live with Salesforce. January of 21, we went live with ServiceNow. This May, we're going live with our foundation alumni on Salesforce. Our goal is to map the entire student journey from inquiry to the foundation alumni all on Salesforce. Never been done. We're going to race to Arizona State who's going to do it first. So you literally can see at any given moment in Salesforce where the student is in their journey. So you can nudge them to the next stop. You can actually do marketing cloud journeys. What I've seen in my daughter, who's a senior in high school applying to colleges, a lot of the best schools in the country have an extremely targeted, personalized marketing approach. And so what we're going to do with our students, if you are a veteran who's returning to the workforce after you've been laid off from your job, we're going to have a specific marketing journey for you and target that and really help you and make it easy and seamless as possible. We haven't done a great job as a college to make things easy and seamless, right? It has to be as easy as ordering something from Amazon, getting that text saying it's 5 houses away, it's being delivered. Like, we want that sort of Amazon experience for our customers, for our students, so we're really working towards that. We'll go live on HR, payroll, and finance July of 23 on Workday, and then about 3 years building out the student information system on Workday after that. That'll be the largest implementation Workday's ever done. So a lot cooking all the time. That's what makes it exciting. I think we've also done a great job. We have a single-digit attrition rate. I think it's because people are constantly challenged and constantly busy, and they're always looking forward to something new and exciting going live. I think it's really helped retain talent because no one's sitting around bored. No one's sitting around. If they're not challenged, I mean, we we just say, well, what do you want to do? And then let's go do that, right? And I think there's always something new to learn. And again, I think that the excitement of a Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Workday at our sort of scale and those implementations have got people pretty, wanting to staple it, see what happens.
It's not just about different opinions of it, but we've always talked about, we're not the kind of, couple. We're the kind of couple basically gets in like lockdown arguments.
Yeah.
It's more in a sense that we basically kind of talk the pros and cons of a scenario. I'll come to it and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, because I'm thinking about this, and we talk it out, and it's like, well, that makes sense. So let's go that route. I can't think of any major decisions we ever come to where we're like polar opposites. Again, it's Matt, we've both been doing this for a long time, and again, same thing I met my staff. Good, bad, ugly. I'm going to tell Matt. He's going to hear about it. It's like, well, here's the bad, the ugly, and so there's a good trust there. And again, we usually come to consensus pretty quick after we kind of just look at pros and cons, and a lot of times it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, and I think too. I mean, we're so busy and so much is happening. Like, who has time to argue and bicker? Like, it's just. Okay, so I don't know that we've ever had really disagreements. We'll talk it out. I mean, we talk constantly on the phone. Yeah. I mean, 1 a.m. we're always, having conversations all the time, just with bouncing ideas off or whatever. But just trying to keep the train moving at all times. So I think that if people have time to argue and bicker, then I don't know, their output's probably not that good. So.
Yeah, inertia as a cure for team dynamic is an interesting concept.
I also think too, and one of the things we've talked about is. We're pretty good about not having egos on the team. Like, right? Like, it has to be my idea or your idea. I don't think the team cares. No one cares. They just want to get the results. And I think the business has seen that too. I think that's kind kind of wear it off to them, and they've seen that, you know what, like, this team really works well together and gels well together, and I think it makes a big difference, so.
I see, what would you tell parents whose children are about ready to go to college? What would you tell them that they may not know?
I mean, first, that we've got great degrees. I mean, people don't realize the kind of degrees. You know, if you're interested in healthcare, we've got great nursing degrees. You know, also, not every kid necessarily is destined for a 4-year degree in something. You know, there's a lot of trade skills out there that are in desperate need, that pay great salaries, that for someone who's really good with their hands, or just that's their aptitude, don't discount that. And so there's other journeys out there. And if your kid, you know, needs to go to a 4-year degree, or wants to go to 4-year college, you know, let us basically help on that journey. We offer, you know, we have great transfer programs to IU and Purdue and other schools, Ball State, where you can pick up your first 2 years at Ivy Tech and then transfer those credits directly to those organizations. We have agreements with Purdue where certain programs you get direct admit into Purdue after completing those classes at Ivy Tech. And from a cost standpoint, it's much cheaper. I would also encourage parents to look at a dual credit within high school. There are a lot of dual credit programs. We did 60,000 dual credits.
Yep.
Kids this last year. I mean, think about it. 60,000 kids basically got dual credit from Ivy Tech, which transfers around. So again, we got great programs. We're extremely cost efficient. We have great transfer programs. We got great trade school programs. You know, and we also, again, we can personalize that journey. You know, we also help students, whether it be online or in person. We can support both. We spent a lot of time over this last year developing what we call the Classroom Anywhere technology. You know, so if a student can't make it to class that day, they can connect via Zoom. They can basically, in those classrooms, we've got multiple cameras, multiple televisions, so it's not like you're basically looking through one view at the professor talking at the podium. They're immersed in that classroom. They can have discussion with their students. You know, we try to really look at it from a student focus. And again, we have campuses all over the state, so we're close. So again, lots of things.
Yeah, I love this question. So Ivy Tech graduates more registered nurses than any college or university in the country. So that's a fact that we just recently learned. So phenomenal programs, building trades, automotive technology, health sciences, IT. I think the affordability, I mean, I won't soapbox the 4-year degree too much because we obviously have 4-year degrees, but the cost factor alone, it shocks me the amount of money people will pay for an education. And people say, you can't put a price on education. Yes, you can, because it's the price of a Lamborghini sometimes. And so when you break that down, you know, you can do a credit and you can transfer 30, 60 credits in. We had 13 students in South Bend last year, got their high school diploma and associate's degree at the exact same time. They took those 60 credits of dual credit that they didn't have to pay for, and then they transferred that into IU, and they're halfway done as a 19-year-old, and they have to pay for 2 years of college. Like, so if you've got a rock star student that's getting a 1,600 in their SAT, I get the 4-year degree, it's great. But if you've got a student that's maybe a BC student, maybe does some dual credit, unsure what they want to do, God forbid they change their major, right? You can explore that at a community college for pennies on the dollar, $163 a credit hour, whatever our rate is now. So basically you get half of your education for $9,000, right? And transfer that in. It's legislatively mandated to transfer that general ed core, by the way, into a public school, IU, Purdue, Ball State, and State. So you can explore that. And then, so we have parents that come up to us all the time, and they're like, this is the best deal ever. I had no idea. Because an AP exam is different than dual credit. AP only works if that school will take that AP credit. Dual credit, legislatively mandated, especially general education, all your psych, soc, history, English, math, that stuff transfers in the exact same class at an IU or Purdue or a 4-year for pennies on the dollar. I mean, it's the best bargain there. And this is not just unique to Ivy Tech. Most community colleges across the state, across the country have the same sort of thing. And I think it's an incredible bargain. So, you know, parents come up to me like, wow, I saved like $50,000 if I send my kid to, dual credit. It's like, yeah, that's real money. So,
Yeah. And my daughter, she's a junior at IU, and during the summer, she took classes at Ivy Tech to basically get through some of her general requirements at IU. And, you know, she took, if anyone here's an IU grad, and they took finite math at IU, they know how painful that is. And she was terrified of it. So she took the equivalent at Ivy Tech. And she's like, I really like my professor, but it's a lot easier. And she got the credit for it, and she was done. And again, she paid a fraction of that. She's taken several courses over the summer because she's like, I'd rather get those done, take it here at home and get a couple classes knocked out. and it's worked out well. And again, she started IU, and she basically augmented her path along with that.
Let me open it up. Any questions from you all? And if you would, repeat the question once it's asked so we can make sure it gets on video. Jamie?
This might be a strange one, but because you're talking about the programs that you have, and the Fiber Broadband Association has worked with the Department of Labor to create a fiber installation program. Have you gotten wind of that, or are you working? Because they're looking for champions in each state to kind of bring that program. And if because you're talking about trade and things like that, they're treating it like a trade, right? Because you have electricians, you have plumbers, they're all kind of dwindling down in numbers, but there actually isn't a program for somebody who installs fiber specifically. It's usually an electrician who knows some wiring, but not fiber. So is that something that you've got wind of? Have you worked on it?
Yeah, I just heard this a couple weeks ago. So the question is, are we working on a fiber installer program as part of our building trades? I actually think that program is going to be part of the School of IT, and I think MetroNet's actually sponsoring that with IB Tech and doing that. So I just got wind of that a few weeks ago that they're building up that program as we speak.
That's super cool.
Especially for rural areas. I mean, think about that, right?
Yeah.
Finding the fiber installers in rural areas. And Indiana's very rural. Driving all the campuses, we know it's like you know all the way from Evansville to the northwest. That's quite a haul. So.
And it's going to be a bigger demand too, because all of the ARPA funding that's coming
Yep.
over the
Oh, yeah,
next
that's right.
5 years,
Yep.
they want to reach those rural areas,
Right.
and they're going to have a need. I mean, that's definitely a growing.
And it was actually carved out in the Biden infrastructure plan, I think, specifically for rural broadband for that reason, I think. Yeah. So.
Steve?
Yeah, congrats on all the steps you guys have made in rolling out, Salesforce and ServiceNow worked out. I'm making the same bets, by the way.
Awesome.
Those aren't free, and those big initiatives aren't free. What are you guys doing to look at costs in other areas to bring down other costs to help, finance some of the newer things that you want to do?
Yeah, so our procurement team did a phenomenal job. So the question is, what are we looking at as far as cost for doing the major enterprise projects? So our procurement team did a phenomenal job negotiating with Workday. We actually had the lowest Workday cost of any higher institution in the country after maybe some fighting and bickering with them about that. But got a really good cost, and then really it's actually going to be cheaper for us to move to Workday than to stay on our current ERP platform with Illusion and Oracle. So that was a big one. And then looking at consolidation, we did a lot of consolidation of getting so many different application systems that we had to maintain, pay separate licensing for. So consolidating those into Salesforce made it more economically viable.
And we're always looking at, okay, for instance, Microsoft. Microsoft came out with MFA, multi-factor authentication. We had Cisco Duo.
Yep.
And say, okay, well, is it time now for us, as we look at our next licensing upgrade for Microsoft, okay, includes that, can we eliminate that? When we signed an agreement with Cisco a couple of years ago for their security ELA, it included AMP, and we had Sophos. Well, we can eliminate Sophos. So again, we're always kind of looking, okay, as we consolidate this or look at this license, the features in it that allow us to look at our infrastructure, look at our portfolio of software we have today, and where can we basically eliminate duplicity. And so we're always doing that activity. The team's really good at that. Everyone's cost conscious. But, no one basically looks at it based as a blank check. We're always basically understanding, hey, at the end of the day, this is a taxpayer's dollars that we're trusted to manage. Let's do the best job we can with them.
Brian?
How do you secure a perimeter with 160,000 endpoints?
How do you secure a perimeter with 160,000 endpoints? Well, again, that's a loaded question, but the answer is it's a security in depth, and I can do a whole presentation on that. But we have multiple layers of firewalls. But so, in a nutshell, we have kind of our data center, where the crown jewels are, I like to say. We've got firewalls around that, and then we have all of the desktop computing around us, and we have 20,000 plus desktops. Not to mention IoT devices, whether it be cameras, whatever it may be. I don't trust any of them. So it's a zero trust environment. If they're behind my firewall, I view them as malicious, and I can view them to attack me at any given time. So we have, segregation network. We actually went through a terrible exercise of actually segregating our network and saying, this server and this server can only talk on these ports. We went through this exercise. We got rid of the any rules, if you remember that, in the firewall. We use IDS and IPS tools from Cisco. We use third-party solutions like Amazon Route 53. We use the Cisco Umbrella. We use a lot of different security products across the board. And not only that, we also use things like Splunk. We do a constant monitoring, a lot of automation in that space to look at things to make sure there's no bad stuff going on. Again, it's an evolving environment, and it includes lots of different pieces. And one thing is you also got to train your staff. We have robust security training that, was not popular at the time, but I got the college to agree that we do it twice a year, and if you do not complete your security training, we disable your account, And so it's not optional, you have to do it. And so again, and the last thing I would say, going back to how is managing risk. Today, we are managing risk, and we work very closely with the business to manage that risk. We call Security Council, which is made up of the president's cabinet that meets once every 2 months, and we sit down, we say, here are all the risks, here are all the challenges we're facing, here are the options we have. You as a business now can decide how best we can mitigate that risk, because a lot of times those decisions include changes in how the business operates, where if you like security training, are you going to agree that they don't complete the training, you're okay with us disabling their account? You put that ownership on them. You basically make them part of that discussion. They can no longer say, well, it's IT's decision. It's a business decision. So,
Are your
lots of
students
ways.
subject to the training and things as well?
No. I'd love to make them, but no. We also treat them, again, we keep them at very, very distant away from our office. We have a lot of security between them. We view them all as compromised in a sense you basically assume that. We put a lot of tools out there for the students. The students have the option to opt into multi-factor authentication if they want through Google. They have the option if they want to. Again, we let them make that choice. If a student gets on a student workstation, a lab, or things like that, it's very much segregated from the rest of our network. There's things they can't do. It's very locked down. If we have a ransomware attack break out in that student's computer, it's not going to be on that student's computer. Same for whether it be wireless or computer lab, it's not getting past those barriers.
We also do all the usual, pen test, intrusion detection, things like that. But what we've done is, a lot of departments, they tend to get phobic about audit, internal audit. We've done the opposite. We've said, embrace the audit, come in, check everything out, bring in your vendors of choice, whatever you want to do, just let us know so you don't bring the network down. But we encourage them. We work closely with the audit because they've got their own resources and budget where they can bring in other things to help us, and anything they find is going to help us in the college. So we don't shy away from audit. We encourage it.
I would say our biggest threat that we've seen over the years is now that the attack vector shifted from trying to attack IB tech infrastructure resources to how can we attack vendors? How can we attack vendors that IB tech does business with? That's the biggest thing we've seen now. And I'm talking to a lot of my peers, that's they're seeing as well. We announced we're doing a construction project in the paper. Well, bad guys are going to attack those vendors. How can we basically slip in a new invoice or PO to change the bank value number? We've done all the training for that, and we have security in place for that as well. But that's what we're seeing now, is that our third-party vendors are being attacked more than us.
A young lady named Christy Brandt started coming to this event when she was administrative assistant at one of the state agencies. I had met her years ago through a friend of mine. She was working for him. But she really wanted to get into IT, and she was just an administrative assistant. So she made the decision independently to follow the Pathfinder program on her own, did the work, got the certifications, talked about it on social media, and got the attention of her CIO, and ended up being a Salesforce, promoted to a Salesforce administrator inside that agency, and has now been recruited and is successfully working for a Salesforce consulting firm. And if Pathfinder hadn't existed, she would have never had that benefit or that opportunity. So amazing stuff. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making some time today and coming out when it's a little bit scary again right now. We appreciate it. Any final questions before we wrap up? Don't forget about the February 15th webinar for the survey summary and results, and that will be hosted by Raquel Richardson and me. Following that, we will have the normal bi-monthly peer group, March 15th, normal time frame 8 to 10, and we'll feature Mike Butler from First Merchants Bank. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate you coming out. Have a great day.